Welcome to the Page of Our Lives podcast with your hosts, Paige Evanson and me, Leslie Stewart. Every week, we take a page from our own lives or the life of an inspiring friend and give you the Cliff's Notes. We have a very special show today. Our guest is Stephanie Broersma. Stephanie is a wife, mother, author, and founder of Reclaimed Ministry. Stephanie has a heart for women who have suffered betrayal in their marriage after experiencing that herself. Through her own journey of restoration, she now helps women around the world find healing from infidelity in their marriage. Stephanie's story is full of hope, freedom, and the power that comes when we choose to forgive those who hurt us the most. Unfortunately, we had a few technical difficulties when recording today's show, but I promise you'll still get so much from meeting Stephanie and hearing her incredible story. So let's turn the page on our conversation with Stephanie Broersma. Hey everyone, welcome to the Page of Our Lives. We're so excited that you're here today. Paige, we have a special guest on today's show. Why don't you introduce her for us?
Yes, I'm so excited. This is my good friend, Stephanie, and I hated that you guys don't know each other like I know both of you. But by the end of this episode, you are going to be good friends, and all of our listeners, you're going to be good friends. Hopefully even better friends with Leslie and I, but really great friends with Stephanie. So I met Stephanie at the She Speaks conference. I don't even know what year that was. Was it like 2015?
I think it was 2018.
18? Okay.
Or maybe it was, I don't know.
17, 18.
It was around there. Yeah.
Anyway, a few years ago, and I feel like we met in the lobby at the She Speaks conference in North Carolina. And at the time I was living in South Carolina, and Stephanie lived all the way over in Washington. So it really was like God just bringing our paths across one another. So we met and instantly we're like fast friends at the conference, and we're like, we have to hang out more. So Stephanie then ended up coming to a conference in Florida, the beautiful conference where Leslie and I, that's kind of ultimately our connection, is Grace Family Church in Florida. And now, so Leslie and I are, and for those of you who are listening and you don't know about the app Marco Polo, you need to download it. I feel like we should get a sponsorship for it.
I totally think we should. Yes. Tide and Marco Polo. We're pulling hard for both of those.
Exactly. And so Leslie and I are Marco Polo buddies. Stephanie and I are Marco Polo buddies. And Marco Polo, it's like video chatting, but for us busy moms, we don't really always have time for phone calls, but we can do some long Marco Polos. But Stephanie has an amazing ministry for marriages, and especially those marriages that have walked through the unfortunate events of betrayal. And we're going to dive into her story, and we're going into the deep end of the pool today. We are not just lounging, on the little sun deck anymore, or just with your feet in the water. We are going into the deep end. So don't be afraid. This is totally PG for the most part. It might go PG-13. I don't know. But either way, you consider yourself warned. We're going to have a great time. Stephanie doesn't really, well, like I said earlier, Stephanie and Leslie don't totally know each other really well yet, but Leslie's going to really get to know Stephanie and vice versa. And we're just going to have a great conversation today. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. I know this is kind of our relationship is via Marco Polo or text, right? A lot of it is video based. So I feel like this is just a regular conversation that we have, often. So
it is. We're girlfriends, and we're glad that you're here on our podcast. But tell everybody, because I didn't really say in your little intro about your family. You have one husband and 4 children, but go ahead and tell our listeners the Cliff Notes of Stephanie Broersma and family.
I love that you said one husband. Thank you.
One husband. Yeah.
Just to clarify, right? Just to make that clear.
One husband, one dog, right? Okay, you tell. Yes. You tell us.
Yes. So yes, I have one husband. We just celebrated our 19th wedding anniversary, and we've got 4 kids. The youngest is 5, all the way up to 16. 3 girls and a man-child. So
really cute too.
He's adorable.
Yeah, he's really cute.
Yes.
And your girls are beautiful as well too. So
thank you.
Okay. So one husband, 4 kids, 3 girls, 1 boy, 1 dog.
One dog, that's it. Little Cavapoo. She's kind of like my therapy dog. You know, it took us a really long time to finally say yes to a dog. And now that we have one, like she is always on my lap. She will follow me around the house, and come nighttime when the kids want to go to bed and sleep with her, she starts to growl at them. Like, she's like, no, I'm with mom. Like, I'm not done snuggling with mom yet. Don't take me quite yet. It's cute.
Well, I can't believe we're all three dog owners now.
Mhm.
And I was never a dog owner or lover whatsoever, but my dogs have now become like the therapy dogs, especially the golden doodle. He every night he looks at me like, "Are we going to bed now? Are we going? Is it time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." You know, and if you leave him upstairs, he's scratching on the door. It's time. You good? You good? You going to sleep, right? You're not going to pee and then go back to sleep, are you? Like,
they
dogs.
sense your
So,
emotions,
anyway.
right? They know when you need that extra snuggle, and yeah.
They do. They do. All right. Well, Stephanie, so let's dive in because we don't want to keep our listeners just hanging. We want to, bring them in right away. So let's dive in. I want you to go ahead and give us like the cliff notes of your story and how your ministry was birthed, and tell everybody what your ministry name, and then how did this become?
Yes. So very, very cliff note version of our story is we were married for 7 years, and complete blindside confession to a 10-year pornography addiction, which led to multiple affairs. And I had no indication of any of this. That whole idea of like run, better yet, when us moms clean the screen door so well, it's so shiny, you run through the glass door, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how my doors are. They're so shiny.
Oh, mine too.
Right?
100%.
They're so clean. That was what it was. It was like I ran into this door and it kind of bounced back, and I was like, what just happened?
Wow.
And I was left with a husband who was weeping for joy because he had carried this sin secret for so long. And 6 months prior to confession, he had this come to Jesus moment where he just finally was like, God, I can't do this anymore. Like, you have to take this from me. And his addiction was gone. His need to pursue other women, his need to pursue pornography, it was completely gone. And yet he couldn't get to that one last step of confessing to me until April 2nd, one of the worst belated April Fool's joke ever. And so he
How
was.
long had you been married by this time?
7 years.
7 years. Okay.
Yeah, 7 years.
By this time?
Yeah. Addison was 4.5. Our oldest was 4.5, and Charlie had just turned a year. So they were too young to really understand what was going on. So he had confessed that night. There was a bunch of stuff that happened that night. I met up with our pastor, and he said, Steph, if you want to heal, if you want to process any of this, you need to separate, you need space. And so he came to our house. He asked my husband to move out. We were separated for 10 days. And on day 10, the timing of this is so God, right? Like, God is in every detail, even through your worst nightmare. He's involved in every single divine detail of your life. And day 10 of separation was Good Friday. And all day I was just wrestling with God. Like, I want to accept what you did on the cross. I need your grace. I need your salvation. You were the very thing that has sustained me these past 10 days when I haven't been eating, I haven't been drinking, I'm not sleeping. I'm in shock and confusion and complete brokenness. So God, I want to accept all that because I need it to live, but I don't want to forgive certain people. So if we could just go through this whole Easter weekend, and if I can just accept that free gift, but I'm just going to leave this one person over here because it's too hard to forgive, then we're good. Thank you. Happy Easter. And so Good Friday came, God and I were wrestling, and it finally just kind of broke. And I realized that, I can't accept the gift on the cross unless I give everybody around me forgiveness, regardless of how painful, regardless if they deserve it or not. I'm undeserving. Therefore, I need to give that to my husband. And so that night I said, I forgive you. We shared in communion. And that really was the birthing point of Reclaimed Ministry. That was the point in our story, in my story, where the rubber hit the road. And all of a sudden God was like, okay, now you've released this to me. Now I can start healing your heart, the inside, the hard work. The beauty of the story started to unfold at that point. And that was 12 years ago.
Wow.
Really? 12 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does that look like at the very beginning? Because, okay, you've had this kind of come to Jesus confession moment, and then you've had another come to Jesus, like, I have to forgive moment. So then what? What did you do? What did you do next? What did that look like for you and Tim?
Yeah. I cried more. Right? Like the amount of tears spilled in this journey can be measured by the gallons.
Yeah.
It was really ugly. I think for anybody thinking this journey is going to be easy, anybody thinking this hard, painful betrayal journey is going to be beautiful, it's not. It's hard, it's ugly, it's exhausting, physically, emotionally, spiritually. You battle it out with God, because you're like, God, why? If you love me so much, why would you cause this pain? And, I think it's important to realize that life is never just a one and done situation. You don't get to say like, oh, I did this hard thing, check this box, now my life is going to be easy and pretty and a cute little package because I did that one hard thing. No, there's hard things all the time, right? Like we're told in scripture that, we're going to be walking through times of trouble. In this life, you will have trouble. And it's not just one, it's troubles. And so at that same time, my sister was fighting breast cancer. Right, just about a year prior, we had sold the salon. So there was kind of an already existing identity crisis of, now I'm not a business owner. I'm working from home. I'm now a stay-at-home mom. My sister's fighting for life, right? Like there's all these changes on top of the betrayal. So it was really exhausting. We brought in a ton of people. We had daily accountability. We had mentors. We had counselors. And I would even say we had medication. I had to go on antidepressants because the depression is incredibly intense when the enemy has, when you finally say, God, I'm going to choose your way and I'm going to choose the path of forgiveness. That's when the enemy goes, oh, not so fast. I'm going to put a double assignment on your back for all of my army to come after you and to get you to distract from restoration. I want to pull you away from Jesus. I don't want this marriage to succeed. And so you're fighting a spiritual battle and you're also fighting a marital battle. So it's exhausting, it's hard, it's ugly, and it's intentional 24/7.
I'm curious, Stephanie, when you, like you said, you talked about kind of the revelation that this was happening and then the point that the Lord brought you to in choosing to forgive your husband. But in that moment in choosing to forgive him, did you decide then and there, like, I'm going to fight for this marriage. I'm going to fight to make this work. Or was that still kind of part of peeling the onion, if you will, of all the layers and the complexities of what was really going on beneath the surface?
The first night, my pastor said to me, well, back it up a little bit. When Tim confessed and then I left the house, and he did confession really well. He had set it up where he had a family member take our kids from the home. So it was just the two of us when he confessed. So he didn't know how it was going to react. So he had set that up well. And so I left the house and I went to church, and that's kind of where they set up all this support for me. And the meeting at my pastor's house was one of those things they had arranged. And that's where Kim had shared, you need to grieve the death of your marriage. And so I started that night grieving the death of my marriage, not knowing if it was going to be restored, healed, or if I was going to end up in divorce. My mindset prior to confession was there are no second chances. If you ever ... if I ever discover ... right? Like I was very, very firm about this because as a hairstylist, you hear a lot of stories in your salon chair.
Sure.
And I had my mind already made up. Like if this were to be my story, nope, there's the door and you don't come back. And then God, met me in this situation. I'm going, oh, and now I have to take my words back, right? Because grace and forgiveness. And so I really didn't know what was going to be the outcome of our marriage. Of course, I wanted to say like, we have to stay married for the kids, right? Like that's your immediate thought is we have to stay married for the kids. But then you get into the nitty gritty of the why did this marriage fall apart and why are you struggling with a sexual sin? And what do I have to own in this journey? Because it wasn't just his fault, right? Like even though I had some part in it, it was like 1% of the problem, but I had to fix that 1%. 100% of the way. So I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. My mindset was just, God, I choose forgiveness, and whatever that looks like, every day we're going to have to reevaluate. But it became pretty clear soon after that divorce was not an option. I wanted this marriage to work. I just didn't know what that looked like.
Yeah. I'm sure that was surprising, just kind of, if you could pull yourself out of the situation and look at it, kind of from above. Like, I'm sure you shocked yourself in a way by that ended up being your heart posture. Especially when you sort of when you played the what if game for all those years of, if this ever happened, then I'm going to do this. Right. So I love that God took you by surprise in your own reaction and response to this. I love that you brought up the fact that, that this was a two-way street, and that even though your portion was not as large as your husband's portion, you did have an element of ownership in what led to this. Because I think sometimes when we talk about betrayal, we put all the emphasis on the betrayer, and oftentimes the one who's the victim is not always left to see that they've played a role in some respects. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. What would you say were some of those things that God showed you about either your part to play, or maybe some of those surprises that were maybe deeply within you that you kind of didn't even know were there till sort of all this starts kind of coming up from underneath the ground?
I was raised in a family that did not willingly express emotion. I think a lot of gen not taught well on how to communicate with one another. They're not taught to express emotion. Mainly the older generation. It's very performance based. And so my perspective, my lens on how to communicate well was a little bit fractured. And if there was any takeaway, it was how to not communicate and how to communicate well. Learning that my really well done cold shoulder is not effective. The silent treatment gets you nowhere, right? And I was fed this lie from the enemy that your opinion doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter. Just don't say anything. What your perspective is on maybe like right in marriage, finances, one of the biggest hot buttons for arguing. There was a big twist. You know what? He's not going to hear you anyways. He's the leader. So, we'll just leave that decision up to him. And you just keep your thoughts to yourself. And I learned that I should have spoken up into those situations. I should have been a little bit more bold rather than just retreating, because that's what the enemy did to me. It was like the enemy just put duct tape over me and said, don't say anything. It's not your place. It's not your position. And so that was something that God highlighted for me, was how I communicated my words, my body language, how I showed Tim that I loved him. My 5, Gary Chapman's 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Mine is not physical touch. I could snuggle for the rest of my life. I have to work hard to pursue the sexual intimacy in marriage. All of the non-sexual intimacy, I'm good. Right? I think that's for most women.
I think a lot of women are that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And learning what intimacy looked like, right? Like intimacy is not just sex. And then you walk through betrayal, and then you have this idea, this new broken lens that says sex is gross, sex is dirty. It was used as a weapon against you. It was used to hurt you. So then I had to reframe what my definition of sexual intimacy looked like. So a lot of it came down to communication. That was probably one of the biggest things. One of my greatest takeaways was I think as women, especially in a small town, we're quick to judge. Just anybody is, right? Like we're quick to judge somebody by their outward appearance. You would never know by the look of this that this is 4-day hair, this is 2nd day makeup, and I didn't shower today. But, right? Like that's from the outward judgment, right? But if you were to take the time to ask somebody, how are you really doing? And to look into somebody to see what's really going on the inside, I was quick to judge. And my greatest takeaway was the ability to see somebody for who they are and what's going on inside, heart, mind, and soul, not just on the outside. I have so much more grace for situations because I've been there.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, for sure. I think just hearing your story, the word that just jumps out at me is empathy. I think that you learn to have an empathy towards obviously your husband and the brokenness and the healing that he was needing to go through, empathy towards yourself.
Yeah.
And just allowing yourself to, feel the grace of God and feel the emotion that the Lord has for you. And obviously empathy for others, for other people who are broken and wherever they are in their journey. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, go ahead, Paige.
Like, let's go back to this first, like, let's say, I don't know, maybe the first year after, as you guys are rebuilding, what were some of the things? I mean, I would imagine that you'd have some moments where you're like, you do have a lot of empathy, but then I would imagine there's probably moments of a lot of anger as well. Like, talk to us about all of the feelings that came with this new journey that you were trying to rebuild. Like, were you out the gate, I'm good to go, or was it kind of a roller coaster? What? Tell us about that.
Oh, girl, I hate roller coasters. I get motion sickness. And this very much made me physically ill at times. So if you were to define that first year afterwards, it was so bipolar. Because one day I'm good, the next day I am totally tanking. I often said to so we kept our circle very, very small. Because we live in a small town, because we chose reconciliation together. And that's one key thing is for any bride that's listening in or watching, reconciliation can take place after a divorce, because we can have a reconciled relationship with Jesus Christ, even if our horizontal relationships are not together.
It's good.
And so when we chose to have reconciliation as a couple, we entered into the really hard and the really ugly. And that meant that sometimes we would just sit together and cry. Sometimes I would wake up and we called them blue days. I would have a blue day where I was just thick in depression. I was heavy in emotion of tears and reflection and anger, right? Like all the feelings, all of them, because they all sat with me at the table. They were all present, but some days, some were a little bit more highlighted than others. And in that moment, Tim never said, you know what, it's been 6 months, get over it. No, he entered in with me. He sat with me on the couch and he just sat silently and held me as I wept, because for any grief journey, you know that it's never just okay, I did the 7 steps, I'm good to go. No, like grief is all over the map, much like those ugly roller coasters. You never know when a twist or turn or upside down is coming, because you can run into a trigger. And I hate that word trigger. I actually like to use the word notification. On your phone, when it starts beeping, you never know when a notification is going to pop up. And that's much like a trigger. So that first year very much was heavy figures, whether it was him not responding to a text message and then my mind goes to a dark place. If it was his location randomly shut off his phone, I would go to a dark place. A worship song would pull me into just an intimate time with God, and I would become a hot mess. And so it was everyday accountability, every day our mentors checking in, every day my go-to people asking me if I got my essentials done. Every day just saying, God, I need you for every single second of this day. Another important thing I did for that first year is accepting that I gave forgiveness. Like I spoke that to Tim. I didn't just think it, because the enemy has control of our thoughts, but when we say it out loud, he is void. And so knowing that I spoke that to Tim, I had to remind myself every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, that no, I chose forgiveness. Therefore, I need to have that posture of forgiveness towards him. And we didn't do it right. I mean, there was a lot of times where both of us didn't do it the right way. But I never had a position of like, I'm this way because you did this to me, right? Like I didn't ever become historic and start pointing fingers at him for the way I felt. It was very much a posture of humility, grace, and forgiveness every single hard, long day.
I love that you bring that up. I can't help but think about like, I mean, that's our relationship with God. I mean, really, Stephanie, I mean, that's what you have walked out every day since, and what God gives us the opportunity to walk out every day in our relationships is, are we truly going to love the people around us who've hurt us the deepest, in the way that God's called us to love them? And I think the problem with our world is that when we make this choice, when we say, I choose forgiveness, I choose reconciliation, I choose marriage, the world says you're crazy. Like there's so much more freedom over here. It's the whole, you do you, like you got to self-preserve, self-protect, right? You're just going to open yourself up to be wounded again. And it's seen as actually a posture, I think, of weakness when we choose to stay together, or even if it's not a marriage, situation, if it's just a friendship or some other type of betrayal, like when we choose forgiveness, the world says that's weak. But it's actually the strongest point you could ever take in this scenario. I mean, it's the point that Jesus took for every single person on the planet. So I just love that you had the opportunity over and over, day after day, to walk out what it looks like to extend love and grace and forgiveness in the way that Jesus has extended that to us. So there's so much truth in there. I'm curious, at what point in time did this sort of move from being your journey, your story, to now suddenly, wait, we're doing this and we're actually like kind of having a ministry? I'm sure it was an evolution. It's never like, let's make this a ministry, right? Like, oh, I think we maybe lost Paige, but we'll keep going. So at what point in time did that kind of transition begin to take place?
So 2 years post confession, our church was doing a sermon series based off of hard things. The sermon series was titled Ouch. And this particular Sunday, the message was coming clean. And our pastor had asked him at this point, who had walked with us every single day, he had asked us, can we video your testimony? Can we share this with our church body? Of course, all of my fears, all the lies the enemy was saying about me, I totally believed in that moment, and I resisted it. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. Nobody's going to know this mess because we look pretty, and no, I don't want that out there. And keeping in mind that a lot of family members had not heard about our story. I mean, our circle was so small for so long because we didn't want those opinions to affect our journey.
For sure.
And so they recorded my husband's testimony, and 3 weeks later, they recorded mine on the day they talked about forgiveness. And somehow, through a series of people and connections, the 700 Club got a hold of our testimony, and they had come out and filmed about 2 months after it aired at our church. And that really was the point where God was like, okay, now this ministry that I've been working on, between just 2 people. Now this ministry is national, and our testimony was played in front of millions. And now have a local ministry with people, and invitations started coming in, women saying, hey, like, can you meet for coffee? Emails, text messages, like it was kind of blowing up. And I didn't see it then. I just saw it as, hey, like I have a story, and if I can offer you some hope and encouragement, absolutely, I'll enter in with you and I'll walk alongside you. And I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader, locally and from a distance, right? And so that was really kind of when the ministry like actively started. And a gal from church said, hey, you know, there's no small group, there's no support group here. How about you start a small group and we'll start you in 6 weeks? And I said, oh, but no. And she goes, well, there's no curriculum, so you have to write your own curriculum. I'm like, oh, yep, nope. Another hard no, right? And she just said, no, like God's given you a story and God will give you what you need to share. And so I wrote, which is now a 12-week curriculum, the Reclaim Small Groups. And I've been leading those for 9 years. We've had hundreds of women come through Zoom groups, through in-person groups. They're meeting across the United States. I even think we have got a couple in Germany and Australia. So that's amazing, right? It's just amazing. But it really is. It's a time where women can get together and we process, right? I think one focus, you have 2 options really when you're faced with betrayal, is you can choose to stay bitter, and you can choose to always just be like, nope, I'm not going to grow through this because it's not my turn. This is your problem. This is not mine. And I'm out. Or you can say, God, what are you trying to teach me in this season? Because that's life, right? Like I said, I was going through a lot of hard stuff at that time. Years later, we adopted. So now we have adoption trauma. We've got parenting, right? Like even on a good day, parenting has its issues, and it's going to bring you to the foot of the cross.
Yes.
And so life was busy. Life was hard. And I could have chosen to stay in this place where I'm like, no, God, I don't want to minister to other people. Or I could choose to say, okay, God, like, show me my flaws. What are my blind spots? And that's really the posture, the whole focus of all of the Reclaimed content and books and ministry is this position of, God, I don't like where I'm at. I don't want to process this betrayal. It's too hard, but make me a better person through it. And so you go through 12 weeks in these small groups, and you really do, you talk about the betrayal, you talk about the grief, you talk about building trust again. And even if your marriage on a horizontal level is broken, how do you restore trust in God through this?
Oh, that's so, so good. I love that. Tell us a few, just maybe testimonies or stories that have been the thing that keep getting you up and out of bed every day and saying yes to helping couples and really women walk through the issues of betrayal.
Oh my goodness, there's countless stories, but one recently was, so we have a Reclaimed ministry community on Facebook. It's a private community of, we're over 1,000 women at this point who post daily. You will find support, encouragement, and a ton of prayer. And it's all right surrounded by Jesus Christ. It's all in the love of Jesus that we're here to encourage one another. And yesterday, this bride posted, it just had me, I was a mess. I was so emotional, and yet like they were happy tears, right?
Yeah.
She posted about her marriage. Her husband of 13 years was baptized on Sunday. And out of those 13 years, 11 of them, he was unfaithful to her through addiction, through affairs, substance abuse, you name it. Because it's right, like sin is never just a one sin. There's always, sin has cousins, it has family members. And so there's always other things that kind of feed into your one sin nature. So and this guy stood up in front of church and said, yes, Jesus Christ is my savior, and I'm walking away from this. And to hear the testimony and then to watch the video of him being baptized, that was a mess. I was so emotional, just like praise God for that, right? Like here you have this bride who's been praying for 13 years for her marriage. And finally, talk about long suffering. She sees this, and we don't know what the future holds for them, but we know that now his faith is restored.
Yeah.
Another really cool testimony is within our community is there was a bride who has not received child support for months. And we're talking like 5 digits worth of child support she's not received. That causes some stress, right? On the budget. Single mom, 2 girls. And she just reached out and said, please pray for me. I need to come up with rent, and I'm struggling. It was just a really ugly situation. And the community of other broken brides came together and provided her rent. They provided her encouragement. They covered her in prayer. These are the testimonies that keep me going, where you see broken people saying, hey, I'm broken, but I have something I can help you with. Another gal, she just tell me when to stop. Cause like I said, I've got hundreds.
No,
of
I
these
give us a couple more. They're so good.
Yeah. She was walking through a really ugly divorce. The custody battle was really, really ugly. And she called me up and she goes, I just have to tell you, like every time I'm out with a hard meeting with my lawyer, I go back to the Reclaimed group and I read the prayers and I read the things and I meditate on the scriptures. And she goes, regardless of the outcome, I have peace. God is with me and he's never left my side. That to me is beautiful, because you see a bride who's completely crushed and not wanting to have a divorce, and yet she's going through it with peace, right? Like that's beautiful. That is beauty from ashes.
Definitely.
One more
Okay.
is there's a couple who has been married for 23 years, and he just randomly had two affairs. It kind of started as an emotional affair, into 2 physical affairs, and they were separated for 9 months. It was really ugly. It was really hard. Right? It's always ugly. But they were separated for 9 months. And what they did is they chose to have separate counseling, which I strongly suggest, because if you are met with a spouse who doesn't want restoration or who is still choosing to actively walk out and sin, couples therapy is not going to be beneficial to you. So they chose to have separate counseling. They worked on their own hearts, their own relationship with Jesus. And at 8 months into their separation, they started their couples counseling. They came together as completely new people in the marriage. And they now have been married for 26 years. Their marriage is absolutely beautiful. And they're walking out with grace, humility, and forgiveness. And so those are the stories I get to read. Those are the stories I get to hear. And it's absolutely beautiful to just to see God's hand in all of it, and to see broken people still find the good, right? I always say, like, what are your 2 blessings? Find 2 blessings a day, because it changes your perspective. And it allows you to still see God in your situation.
I love that you say that. We were this whole month we're talking about marriage, and really specifically kind of marriage in the middle. That's what Paige and I call this season of life that we're in, is marriage in the middle. You know, we're not newlyweds anymore, and we're not, empty nesters. We're in the middle. And I think marriage in the middle is sometime, I mean, I don't know, because I haven't gotten to the empty nester stage, but I can say marriage in the middle is a tough season. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that families are busy and we're being pulled in a lot of different directions. And, there's things that go on, with careers kind of in the middle of your career life, if you will. And so I would love to just get some words of wisdom from you for women who are maybe in that middle marriage season, who are maybe struggling to just remember the good about why they said yes in the beginning, why they said I do. Maybe the love is a little bit lost in the marriage. And what would be your wisdom? What would be your encouragement for her today?
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes hand in hand with, like, if you're just recently in a position where you discovered unfaithfulness in your marriage, or maybe it's just, it's messy and you're in the middle of a boring marriage, right? I feel like we're so quick to just get into a pattern And then we don't stop to go, wait, like I'm putting all this energy into my career and having to continue my education and my career, but why are we not continuing to educate our marriage? And so I guess three things I really want to say, because these three things can be applied to a bride who's just recently discovered betrayal or addiction in her marriage, but it also can apply to the bride who is in that middle, right? That mundane middle part of marriage. So the first one is to pause and pray. Time allows the hurt and those doing the hurt, right? So the betrayed, but also the betrayer, to learn new coping mechanisms. When we just push play and never pause to say, whoa, what's working, what's not? How can we make this better? You just are going to be stuck in that routine. And it's like the hamster wheel, right? You sometimes have to exit out to go, oh, that's why it's not working, right? Like, oh, we have no filters on any of our devices. Oh, we are getting all of the things and we're not putting any sort of hedge of protection around our home to protect not just our marriage, but our kids. So push the timeout button, right? Pause and pray. Let time be the indicator as to when to jump back in or when to maybe just kind of withhold and say, okay, God, you tell me when I need to go back into that. You tell me when I'm ready to start playing again. You don't put a basketball player in for the entire game and expect them to perform the same way in the fourth quarter as you do the first quarter.
Yeah,
they need breaks. They need hydration. They need, you need to sit on the bench occasionally, and that's okay. The second thing is to find community. No marriage is meant to be alone. No betrayal journey is meant to heal on its own. You need your tribe. So get the mentors, find marriage accountability partners. Even if it's good, you need the wisdom of not only the older couples, but also the younger ones to maybe encourage you to have more fun. You need your tribe of people to come alongside you when to your kids, to your career, and you maybe have a lack of funds, you go to your people and they're going to support you. When you need prayer, you go to your people, they're going to pray for you. And so really dive into that. Find support groups that can walk you through whatever it is you're struggling with. And then the third one is just to press into your relationship with God. Neglecting the invitation of the Holy Spirit to enter into your life 24/7 is kind of doing the whole, I don't need you, God. I got this, right? We're to have this posture all day long, even when we're resting, right? Like when the enemy likes to attack me, it's always at night. He will come into my thoughts, come into my dreams, and he will plant a lie in my mind. And sometimes I'm quick to deflect it and be like, other times I'm weak and I attach to it. And then my whole demeanor all day long is bitter and it's cold and I'm angry. And until I do the pause and pray and reevaluate, I'm not going to see that the enemy he was just holding my hand through that conversation, through that argument. A chore didn't get done. And instead of saying, hey, can you come back and do this for me? I just chose to give him the cold shoulder, right? And so we need to have this posture of saying, Holy Spirit, come into my life 24/7. I'm open to your correction. I'm open to your grace. God, I need you. And so that really is the first relationship that needs to be restored, regardless if you're walking betrayal or in the beginning and the end, or that mundane middle of marriage. Like, it's God first. And this is what I say to all of our ministry volunteers, is that it's God, and then it's you, then it's your husband, it's your kids, and ministry is way down at the bottom. He's got to be your number one. So those three things.
I love it, man. That's just life advice right there. Honestly, no matter kind of what your story is, pausing to pray, finding your community, and reestablishing or establishing your relationship with God. I mean, those are just we've talked about all three of those things in previous episodes. So I just love that we didn't even tell you to say that. Like, you just agree. Those are the three real foundational things that we absolutely have to have. Whatever, brokenness we're walking through, or whatever betrayal, or whatever just sort of marriage in the middle we might be experiencing right now. Stephanie, how can people find out more about you and your ministry? What's the best way to find you?
It's a one-stop shop, reclaimedministry.com. From there, you can find our YouTube channels. We've got some videos posted on there. We're on Pinterest, Instagram, Reclaimed Ministry. Facebook really is kind of where you want to go. We've got our public ministry page, where it's just daily encouragement. And then the Reclaimed Ministry community, where you have that private support group of women. Those really are the areas that you can go to connect with us. You can also email me at stephanie@reclaimedministry.com.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you. We'll put all that in the show notes too, so it's real easy for people to find you guys. I just thank you so much, first of all, for just sharing your heart, your story, your journey. It's just a treasure to hear everything that God's walked you through. I love your heart for restoration and reconciliation, first and foremost, for people to be reconciled to their Heavenly Father, and then for the Lord to intervene in whatever those horizontal relationships are and the brokenness that's there. And so thank you for sharing your beautiful story, your beautiful journey with us today. I know Paige had a little bit of technical difficulties today, but we powered through. I just love how you brought Stephanie and myself to this intimate little moment we had to get together. So
you're welcome. You're welcome. I've texted all of my people, get off of the Wi-Fi and the dogs. And apparently it's, it is almost comical, because if I were the enemy, I would do anything to stop this message from getting out.
That's right.
And so, but whatever, he's defeated and he's dumb.
Amen.
And the message has been recorded whether I'm there or not. So
That's right.
I'm thank you for sharing all that you shared, Stephanie. It's such an honor to know you, and it's an honor to watch even just in the past few years, I've watched your ministry grow and thrive and flourish. And it's just so cool. It's really cool. I'm excited for what God has in store, and I'm so excited for everybody to hear all that you've shared today.
You bet.
Being my cheerleader.
Oh yeah, I am. I'm like the rah-rah girl. I'm like, everybody
totally are.
Yeah.
Yes, she is. She's everybody's rah-rah. Our Paige has decided, our unofficial theme of this is everything is figure-outable. So, because I've needed a lot of cheerleading along the way as we've launched this podcast, and she's like, Leslie, everything is figure-outable. We can do this.
Absolutely.
Everybody needs a Paige in their life. I say that regularly.
Yes.
So, and I think everybody needs a Stephanie in their life too, to not lose hope, to not give up. So thank you for everything that you and your husband are doing.
I do want to add, I have not walked a similar story as Stephanie. I mean, I've got my own details of marriage issues, but I will say, of course, because she's my friend, I read her book and I was so blessed by it. Yes. It was so, and I think I even have one of the original copies. It's since even been reworked. But so even if you have not walked through betrayal, there is so much good, sound marriage advice in Stephanie's book. So, but this may not have totally applied to you in your story, but don't let that hold you back from getting her book and her resources, because chances are you need the encouragement that she has to offer, or somebody, or you will come across somebody who will walk this story and you'll be like, hey, I have a resource. I have a connection. Heard about it on the podcast. So
yes, I agree. Absolutely. 100%.
Yep. It's good stuff.
Perfect. Okay. Well, Stephanie, thanks again for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you. And Paige, as always, thanks for helping us jump in the deep end on Page of Our Lives podcast.
You're welcome.
That's it for this episode. We will see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Well, that closes another chapter on the Page of Our Lives podcast. Did you know we're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube? Well, we are. Just search for Page of Our Lives podcast. Curious where to find things we mention on the show? Check out our show notes on our website, pageofourlivespodcast.com. And if you liked today's episode, be sure and share it with a friend. And we would love for you to leave a rating or a review in your podcast player. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.